The Mohawk Nation at Akwesasne is a Mohawk Nation territory that straddles the intersection of international borders and provincial boundaries on both banks of the St. Lawrence River. Most of the land is in what is otherwise the present-day United States. Although divided by an international border, the residents consider themselves to be one community. It was founded in the mid-18th century by people from Kanien'kehá, a Catholic Mohawk village south of Montreal. Today Akwesasne has 12,000 residents, with the largest population and land area of any Kanien'kehá community. Beginning in the 18th century, Akwesasne was considered one of the 7 nations of Canada. It is one of several Kanien'kehá territories within present-day Canada. Others are Kanien'kehá, Akwesasne, and the 6 nations of the Grand River First Nation, founded after the American Revolutionary War. The name Akwesasne in Kanien'kehá means land where the partridge drums, referring to the rich wildlife in the area. Geography. Akwesasne territory incorporates part of the St. Lawrence River, the mouths of the Ricotte and St. Regis rivers, and a number of islands in these 3 rivers. The territory is divided north-south by an international boundary. The northern portion is further divided by the Canadian provincial boundary between Ontario and Quebec. The 3 nations crossing connects Kanien'kehá to the city of Cornwall in the north and Roosevelt, New York in the south. Because of the St. Lawrence River to the north and New York State, USA to the south, the Quebec portion of the Akwesasne Reserve is an exclave claimed by Canada. To travel by land from Akwesasne or Kanien'kehá to elsewhere in Canada, one must drive through New York State. In the U.S. state of New York, the territory of Akwesasne coincides with what is called the St. Regis Mohawk Reservation. This portion of Akwesasne is bisected by New York State Route 37. This major state highway in the North Country of New York extends for 127.40 miles on an east-west axis. In Canada, the territory within Ontario is called the Akwesasne 59 Indian Reserve, and the territory within Quebec is called the Akwesasne Indian Reserve. History. Beginning about 1000 AD, nomadic indigenous people around the Great Lakes began adopting the cultivation of maize. By the 14th century, Iroquoian-speaking peoples, later called the St. Lawrence Iroquoians, had created fortified villages along the fertile valley of what is now called the St. Lawrence River. Among their villages were Stadacona and Hochelaga, visited in 1535 to 1536 by explorer Jacques Cartier. While they shared certain culture with other Iroquoian groups, they were a distinctly separate people, and spoke a branch of Iroquoian called Laurentian. By the time Samuel de Champlain explored the same area 75 years later, the villages had disappeared. Historians theorize that the stronger Mohawk from the south waged war against the St. Lawrence Iroquoians to get control of the fur trade and hunting along the river valley. By 1600, the Mohawk used the valley for hunting grounds and as a path for war parties. In the early 17th century, some mixed Iroquois migrated from present-day New York to Kanien'kehá, a Catholic mission village established south of Montreal by French Jesuits. Kanien'kehá is a Kanien'kehá word meaning, at the rapids. Here, many First Nations people converted to Roman Catholicism. During the colonial years, this community participated in the fur trade. Some men regularly traveled to Albany, New York for better prices from the English and Dutch than the French were willing to give. Due to exhaustion of land at Kanien'kehá and problems with traders' rum at the village, in the mid-1750s about 30 families migrated upriver about 20 leagues to set up a new community. Leaders included the brothers John and Zachariah Tarbell. Father Pierre Robert Jean-Baptiste Billiard accompanied the migrants as their priest. French officials supported the move, paying for a sawmill at the new mission. With tensions rising prior to the 7 Years' War, the French wanted to keep the Mohawk as allies, away from English influence. The Tarbell brothers were from Groton, Massachusetts, born to English colonists, and they had been taken captive in 1707 along with their older sister Sarah, then 14, during Queen Anne's War. John and Zachariah were 12 and 8, respectively. The three children were taken by the French and Abenaki raiders some 300 miles to Montreal. They all became Catholic and were renamed. Sarah Marguerite entered the Congregation of Notre Dame, a teaching order founded in Montreal by French women in 1653. Adopted by Mohawk families in Kanien'kehá, the two boys became thoroughly assimilated, learning the language and ways, and being given Mohawk names. They later each married daughters of chiefs and reared their children as Mohawk. The brothers each became chiefs. They were examples of the multicultural community of the Mohawk, who absorbed numerous captives into their tribe. In 1806, Catholic Cayuga, Oneida and Onondaga from Ogdensburg, New York, joined the St. Regis Band. Starting in 1755, French-Canadian Jesuit priests founded the St. Regis Mission at Akwesasne. The Tarbell brothers were listed among the founding chiefs, representing numerous clans as of 1759, in papers of Lauren Kanien'kehá Pike, the patriarch of Akwesasne's Pike family. The Jesuits first built a log-and-bark church at the mission, then a more formal log church. In 1795 the Mohawk completed construction of a stone church, which still stands, named after the French priest Street, Jean-François Regis. The mission was the source of the French name of the adjacent St. Regis River, an island in the St. Lawrence River, and the nearby village. The church was long a landmark to ships on the river approaching the rapids. In New York, the name was later adopted to apply to the St. Regis Indian Reservation. The villagers have since renamed their community Kanien'kehá. After victory in the 7 Years' War, the British took over Canada and New France east of the Mississippi River. They allowed the Kanien'kehá to continue to have Catholic priests at their mission. The Jesuits helped preserve Mohawk culture, translating the Bible and liturgy into Mohawk. They observed Mohawk customs, for instance, refusing to marry individuals who belonged to the same clan. Through the 18th and 19th centuries, they maintained parish registers that recorded the Mohawk names for life events, even when the people had taken European names as well. At the time of the American Revolutionary War, the Mohawk, Onondaga, Seneca and Cayuga were allied with the British against the American colonists, forced to cede most of their remaining lands in New York to the new government after the colonists' victory. Many of the Iroquois people migrated to Canada, where many settled at the Six Nations of the Grand River First Nation. Some Mohawk joined the growing community at Akwesasne. Under the Jay Treaty, the Iroquois retained rights to cross the newly established borders between Canada and the United States in order to maintain the trade and tribal ties. Battle of the Cedars. The Battle of the Cedars was a series of military confrontations early in the American Revolutionary War, which involved limited combat. The actions took place between May 19 and 27, 1776, at and around Les Cedars, Quebec. In the later stages of the American colonial invasion of Quebec that began in September 1775, no casualties occurred. Claude de Lorimier, a British Indian agent from Montreal, traveled west to Oswegatchie, where there was a fort garrisoned by a company of the 8th Regiment of Foot under the command of British Captain George Forster. De Lorimier proposed recruiting some Indians to launch an attack on Montreal, then held by the American Continental Army, from the west. When Forster agreed, Lorimier went to Akwesasne, where he recruited 100 warriors for battle. The British Allied forces took some American prisoners during the encounters, but these were later freed. 20th-century institutions. Kanien'kehá School, originally called the St. Regis Village School, was run by the Catholic Sisters of St. Anne until the 1970s. Today, the mission is still active and includes a rectory, the large stone church dating to 1795, and a cemetery. Parish records show that the Jesuits respected Mohawk traditions, recording their Mohawk names through the 18th and 19th centuries, even after they had also taken European names. The Roman Catholic parish at Akwesasne falls under 3 dioceses because of international borders and provincial boundaries: the Diocese of Alexandria, Cornwall, Diocese of Valleyfield in Canada, and the Diocese of Ogdensburg in New York. The United States federal government encouraged the tribe to adopt a constitution and elected government following passage of the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934. The Mohawk chose to retain their traditional chiefs. In the 1940s, Ernest Benedict founded Akwesasne's first newspaper, Parish. Benedict covered the resistance of many Mohawk to the system of elections imposed by New York State on the American side of Akwesasne. It insisted on representative elections. On May 24, 1948, a vote was held in which the Six Nations chiefs, based on historic clans and hereditary office, received 83 votes as opposed to the elected chiefs, who only got 1, and the Seven Nations chiefs, who didn't get any. The elected chiefs resigned from office, but the federal government continued to require the tribe to hold elections. Both the federal government and New York State encouraged the tribe to adopt representative elected government, but they resisted. They were put on the list for termination in the 1950s, but Congress never approved this. In 1969, Benedict founded the North American Indian Traveling College, which serves as a cultural center, publishing house, and resource for classes and lectures at Akwesasne and beyond. It operates an art gallery and theater at Akwesasne. In the late 1960s, a period of heightened Native American activism, Benedict also started Akwesasne Notes, which was highly influential and became the largest Native newspaper in the world. Among its noted features were a series of posters included as centerfolds. A supporter gave the newspaper Edward Curtis photographs, which editors combined with quotes from Native American authors for the popular poster series. In the 1990s, the people of Akwesasne raised money in a variety of ways to fund a renovation of their St. Regis Church. They wrote a history of the church and its priests, communities, hamlets and villages in Akwesasne. The 3 main areas, Kanien'kehá, Takon, Tsi, others, Roquette Point, New York, Roosevelttown, New York, Hogansburg, New York, Frogton, New York, Pilon Island, Ontario, Yellow Island, Quebec, St. Regis Island, Quebec, Sugarbush Island, Quebec, outlying islands. Surrounding communities to the southeast, Akwesasne borders the towns of Fort Covington, New York and Bombay, New York. Sections of the southeastern portion of Akwesasne are considered by the town of Bombay to be within the town's jurisdiction. To the west is the town of Massena, New York. Many islands in the St. Lawrence River are part of Akwesasne. Generally, the Akwesasne, non-a-majority English-speaking and daily use, they have more interaction with the people of Cornwall, Ontario and Massena, which have stronger economies, than the French-speaking towns of Quebec. Government. Akwesasne is governed by 3 bodies: the Mohawk Nation Council of Chiefs, the elected Mohawk Council of Akwesasne in the north, and St. Regis Mohawk Tribe in the south. The latter are the 2 recognized by the governments of Canada and the United States, as well as lower-level jurisdictions. Mohawk Nation Council of Chiefs. The Mohawk Nation Council of Chiefs is the traditional governing and religious body of the Mohawk people. The MNCC operates as a member nation of the Iroquois Confederacy or Haudenosaunee. Mohawk Council of Akwesasne. The Mohawk Council of Akwesasne is a government whose representatives are elected within the northern districts of the territory claimed by Canada. The MCA was developed from the Indian bands system introduced by the Indian Act of Canada and the Act's historical and legal predecessors. They are known to Canada as Mohawks of Akwesasne Bands 59 and 15. The MCA operates as a non-partisan, representative democracy divided into 3 geographic and administrative districts. The districts are Kanien'kehá, and Akwesasne, the several islands of the St. Lawrence River within the jurisdiction of the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne are generally counted as being a part of the nearest mainland. General elections are held triannually, with 12 representatives chosen from the districts and 1 Grand Chief. Each district elects 4 chiefs, and all districts vote to elect a Grand Chief, making a council of 12 plus 1. A by-election may also be held if 1 or more of the seats became vacant. Chiefs of the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne: Grand Chief Troy Lyons, Kanien'kehá District Chief Stuck Jacobs, Keaton Johnson, Noncon Thompson, Otto Thomas, Ahkwesáhsne District Chiefs Dale and Cedars, Kiran Sunday, Turner Thomas, Drake Adams, Kanien'kehá District Chiefs Tanner Harold Tarbell, Troy Benedict, Rattans Thompson, Cortland Cedars. Honorary mention: Jan Vincent Hannapel, Karen MacDonald, Blaze White, Tyler Armstrong, Skylar Thomas, Chad George. St. Regis Mohawk Tribe. The St. Regis Mohawk Tribe is a government elected by residents of the St. Regis Mohawk Reservation, a southern district of the territory within the border of the United States. The SRMT operates as a constitutional republic. The tribal council is composed of 3 chiefs, 3 sub-chiefs and a tribal clerk. Elections are held each year on the first Saturday of June to choose 1 chief and 1 sub-chief for a 3-year term. The tribal clerk is chosen every 3rd year. Council of the St. Regis Mohawk Tribe: Chief Beverly Cook, Chief Ron LaFrance Jr., Chief Paulo Thompson, Sub-Chief Eric Thompson, Sub-Chief Michael Connors, Sub-Chief Shelley Jacobs, Tribal Clerk Colleen Jackson Jacko. Governance: Canada and the United States. In 1960, First Nations people were enfranchised in Canada. In 1985, status Indians who voted in a Canadian election were allowed to retain their status. Previously, they would have become non-status, as per the Indian Act. It is uncertain how many Akwesasne participate in Canadian elections. Akwesasne is currently represented in Canada's Parliament by Ann Minthu Kwok New Democratic Party, Guy Lawson Conservative. In 1924, Native Americans were enfranchised in the United States if they had not been previously. By that time, 2/3 were citizens. During the era of Indian removal of the 1830s, Native Americans who chose to stay in historic territories of the South became state and federal citizens. Those who moved to Indian Territory were not considered citizens, as Native American lands were purchased during the 19th century and their claims were extinguished. More were classified as U.S. citizens as they moved to reservations. Akwesasne is represented in the United States Senate by United States Senator Charles Schumer, United States Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. Akwesasne is represented in the United States House of Representatives by United States Representative Bill Owens. Akwesasne is represented in the New York State Assembly by New York State Representative Janet Dupree. Akwesasne is represented in the New York Senate by New York State Senator Betty Little. Education: Akwesasne has 5 elementary schools on the territory. 3 schools are under the direction of the Ahkwesáhsne Mohawk Board of Education. Akwesasne Mohawk School K4, K5 grades 3, 4, 5, 6. Kanien'kehá School K4, K5, grade 7. Ahkwesáhsne School, grades 1, 2 in the English program, and pre-kindergarten to grade 5 in the Kanien'kehá immersion program. 1 school is under the direction of the Salmon River Central School District. St. Regis Mohawk School Pre-K to grade 6. 1 school is run independently. Akwesasne Freedom School, pre-K to grade 8, featuring Kanien'kehá immersion to strengthen language and culture on the reserve. With children learning Kanien'kehá, many parents and other adults are now taking language classes, too. The Akwesasne model of language and cultural revival is being followed by other communities. Generally, Akwesasne non-travel off the territory for secondary education. Post-secondary education is offered on the territory through Ohio Adult Education and State University of New York extension programs with the SRMT. Media. Radio 97.3 CKON-FM is the community radio station. It first went on air on September 29, 1984. CKON is owned and operated by the Akwesasne Communication Society, a community-based non-profit group. It has a country music format, but also has adult contemporary music during evenings, a free format on Fridays and oldies on Sundays. CKON also broadcasts coverage of home and away games of Cornwall Colts and Akwesasne Wolves hockey teams and of the Akwesasne Lightning lacrosse team. Online and print media. Akwesasne Notes. Indian Time newspaper. Attractions. Akwesasne Annual International Powwow, Akwesasne Cultural Center, Akwesasne Mohawk Casino, Annual Akwesasne Winter Carnival, Io Akwesasne Adult Education Center, Mohawk International Raceway, formerly known as Frogton International Speedway, a dirt track racing oval, and host of outdoor concerts. Ronathahan Cultural Center, formerly known as the Native North American Traveling College, Strawberry Music Festival,